Chapter 294, Pledge 1. Clear and cold moonlight slowly spilt from the sky, enveloping the entire forest in a faint and mysterious net of silver. Hoo! With his feet planted on top of a thick branch, a youth tightly held onto the tusk of the tree. His cold deep blue eyes surveilled the surroundings as a small bun appeared at the back of his head, tying his shoulder-length hair. An unusual silence prevailed over the forest. Roar! The silence did not last for long as a ferocious roar soon broke it. Then, appearing from behind a couple of trees was an enormous black bear with sharp claws that extended to at least the size of a pen. Hew up! Standing on the opposite side of the bear was a youth with hazel eyes and curly brown hair. Holding onto a large shield, the youth glared at the bear standing opposite him. After that, crying out, he dashed towards the bear with his right shoulder protected by the shield. Roar! The bear once again roared. Raising its enormous claws, Hein suddenly felt an intense force appear in front of him. Faced with such strength, Hein's face remained calm. Stomping the ground with his foot, he let out an angry cry as a brown color began to envelop his shield. Clank! A clear sound echoed throughout the forest. The sound, which lingered in the air for a couple of seconds, was piercing to the ear. Upon blocking the bear's attack, the force of the impact resulted in the creation of a half-a-meter-wide hole in the ground around Hein's feet. Letting out a small groan, Hein suddenly shouted. KHH, now, Ava. Toodle 2. Once his words faded, the melodious tune of a flute suddenly rang in the air. Rustle! Rustle! Not long after the tune rang out, 3 pairs of red eyes appeared from nearby bushes. Multiple growling sounds soon rang out. Grrr. Then, appearing from behind the vegetation were 3 red wolves. The wolves did not move, glaring at the bear standing opposite them with red bloodthirsty eyes. The wolves continued to growl. Roar! Seeing the 3 wolves in the distance, the bear roared in anger. Then, standing on both 2 feet, the bear raised its paws in the air. As the bear stood up, its sharp claws reflected underneath the moonlight. A ferocious aura quickly spread from its body, and a faint red glow enveloped its paws. Not on my watch. Just when the bear was about to attack the wolves, stomping his foot on the ground, Hein took advantage of the bear's distraction and once again dashed forward, smacking his shield at full force towards the bear's back, throwing it off balance. Now! Hein suddenly shouted. Toodle 2. Once again, the sound of a flute playing rang out. The sound wave sent out from the short flute began spreading out in all directions as the eyes of the wolves flashed. Following this, the wolves that had not moved since appearing finally made their moves. Howling in the sky, they quickly dashed towards the bear. Oh, you. The wolves had already appeared before the bear in a brief 2 seconds. Baring their fangs, they ruthlessly aimed for the neck of the bear. Roar! Blood spilt out, and the bear's agonizing roar rang out. Then, swinging its arm, the bear threw one of the wolves away and raised its paw and clawed towards the wolf that was biting onto its neck. Clank! However, just when the claw was about to hit the wolf, the bear again lost its balance as a tremendous force hit it from the back. Stay down the fuck down, you bastard! Hein cursed as he violently pressed his shield onto the bear, rooting him on the ground. Roar! The bear was enraged by this. However, it could do nothing about it. Despite the bear's attempts to rise to its feet, Hein continued to press his shield onto the bear's stomach, rooting its large body onto the ground. Oh, you. Taking advantage of the fact that the bear could no longer move, the wolves ruthlessly bit onto the bear's flesh. Poochie! Blood violently sprayed from the bear's body. Thud! Ganged up by 3 wolves and 1 human, the bear could not do anything. Eventually, lifelessly looking at its surroundings, the bear breathed its last breath of air before dying.
Ha, ha.
Once the bear died, heavy silence descended on the forest. That was until it was broken by Heinz, who dropped dead on the ground, exhausted. Did we do it? Appearing from behind the tree was a small petite girl. Tightly holding onto a green translucent flute, the girl cautiously looked at the bear on the ground. It's dead, isn't it? Let me check. Hein walked up to the bear with his shield raised to ensure it was dead. Then, circling it a couple of times and seeing that the bear was no longer breathing, Hein smiled. We did it. Upon confirming the bear's death, joy could vividly be seen on Ava's face as she flashed a beautiful smile. Ava. We did it, we finally killed a ranked beast by ourselves. Hein cried out in excitement. This was the first time they beat a ranked creature. Ava and Hein celebrated their victory for the next couple of seconds. Then, recalling something, they both turned their heads towards a certain direction. How was it? Did we do well? Hein asked. Hints of anticipation could be felt in his voice. Wordlessly staring at them from above, a faint smile soon appeared on my face. Not bad. Jumping down from the tree I was on and lightly landing on the ground, I stared at the corpse of the bear. Walking towards it, I bent down and stabbed a dagger towards its skull. You guys sure have improved a lot. From being unable to take care of a single ranked beast to now being able to take care of a ranked one easily. These past 4 months outside of the human domain had not been wasted. Hein and Ava had now comfortably stepped into rank range, and their experience had drastically increased. They could now hold up against more vigorous opponents. A pity that there is no core. I muttered as I wiped my dagger with a white handkerchief. Once again, no core. Despite having hunted so many beasts throughout the 4 months that I had passed in here, I was still unable to find a core. Anyhow, core aside, the most pleasant surprise was now Ava, who could now control more than 3 beasts with the aid of the flute. Although her technique was still not perfect, she was stronger than before. The fight just now being a great example of this. No longer could she be considered dead weight. There's also her. If there was another individual whose strength improved, Angelica stepped onto the Count rank from the Viscount rank. I now had another powerful asset at my disposal. Them aside, I also didn't stand idle during those 4 months. Status. Swiping my hand forward, a small rectangular screen appeared in front of me. Status. Name, Rendover. Rank, C. Strength, C. Agility, C+. Stamina, C. Intelligence, C. Mana capacity, C. Luck, C+. Charm. Profession. Swordsmanship LVL.4. The degree of understanding of the sword has evolved to the next level. User will find it easier to understand previously harder concepts. Martial Manual. Keiki Style, Greater Realm of Mastery. Sword art created by Grandmaster Toshimoto Keiki. A 5-star module focused primarily on reaching the apex of swordsmanship and speed. Upon mastery, the sword art becomes so fast that before an opponent could even think about their next move, their heads would already be rolling on the ground. Ring of Vindication, Greater Realm of Mastery. Highly advanced sword art that creates a perfect ring of defense around the user. The ring can create a 3-dimensional sphere that protects the user from all sides upon mastery. Because of the lack of offensive capabilities, the manual was graded 3 stars. Drifting Steps, Greater Realm of Mastery. Movement art that progresses with each step. With every step taken, user speed will increase. Unless the user stops, speed will continuously improve until the user either runs out of mana or is injured. Quick/style, minor realm of mastery. A sword art fully focused on speed. With one quick draw, the user gains the ability to kill an opponent without them noticing anything had happened. Created to replicate the keiki style. After years of research, this sword art was the result. Full-body martial arts. Hand-to-hand combat technique dedicated to utilizing every single part of the body to incapacitate the enemy. It may be a 3-star art, but upon mastery, it can be used to complement other forms of martial art. Skills. G. A monarch's indifference. A skill that enables users to erase all emotions and act as a supreme monarch that only calculates the best option regardless of circumstance. D. The One. A skill that enables the user to instill fear into the opponent's minds, resulting in them feeling like they were standing before a sovereign that overlooked everything. The skill may work on individuals who are one rank higher than them. However, if the difference between the two parties is greater than 2 ranks, the skill effect diminishes. A lot has changed during those 4 months, and most notable was the fact that I had now broken through to rank. Not only that, but I was now close to reaching the next realm of mastery for the keiki style. The essence realm of mastery. Once I learned that I would finally be able to use the 4th stance of the keiki style, once again, my strength would shoot up to the next level. Everything was slowly coming into place. Trying. My 2-way radio suddenly beeped, disrupting me out of my thoughts. Taking out a small device from my pants, I quickly answered. Ryan? Ren, they're near. A slight sense of urgency could be felt in his voice as he spoke. My brows knit as a result. Already? How far? According to the devices I've installed and the drone, they should be a couple of kilometers away from here. Proceed as originally planned. Understood. Ryan quickly ended the transmission. Putting the 2-way radio away, I looked at Hein and Ava. You guys proceed as planned. Yes. Thoughtfully nodding her head, Ava jumped onto one of the wolves and disappeared into the forest. Giving me a nod, Hein followed suit, leaving me all alone inside of the forest. Silence once again descended in the forest. Closing my eyes, I sat down on a rock and lit up a small fire. Then, taking an apple from my dimensional space, I took a small bite. Crunch. A subtle crunching sound rang out. Chewing on the apple, gazing into the distance, my eyes flashed coldly. It's about time I got rid of you lot. Chapter 295, Pledge 2. Crunch. The crunching sound of an apple being bitten rang out. The juices from the apple trickled down the hand of a young man whose deep blue eyes reflected the burning fire opposite him. Crunch. The youth took another bite of the apple with a cold and apathetic look. Rustle. Rustle. Suddenly, a rustling sound arose, and 4 shadows silently materialized from all sides of the youth. Despite being surrounded by all sides, the youth kept his head lowered and continued to eat his apple, seemingly unbothered by their presence. Before long, a male with fair skin and green eyes appeared from the other side of the youth. Outwardly he looked like a perfect gentleman, as he had a kind smile on his face. Enjoying your meal? He asked. He was met with dead silence. Shrugging his shoulders, Xavier sat on a rock opposite Ren. Looking at Ren from top to bottom, an amused look appeared on his face. Is that how you look without the scars, 876? Not bad, you look a lot better than before. Crunch. Once again Ren took a bite of the apple, completely disregarding Xavier's presence. Not minding Ren's attitude, Xavier continued. If you remember, We've previously met once before. Back in the monolith. One broken hand, a punch in the stomach, 2 broken shoulders. Cutting Xavier off, opening his mouth, Ren softly mumbled. Xavier's brows knit. Have you gone crazy during the time that you left the monolith? As he said that, wariness crept into Xavier's heart. Things were odd. After spending so many months trying to catch 876, once they were able to finally catch up to him, he seemed completely unbothered. Almost as though he had been expecting their arrival. But that was impossible. He was only one person. How could it be possible for him to find out about their arrival? Furthermore, they had already checked the surroundings thoroughly. Apart from him, there should be no one else. Glancing towards the 4 black-clad people, Xavier nudged them with his head. Instantly they approached Ren. Standing up, Xavier's eyes flashed coldly. What a pity. Although I was ordered to bring you back alive, I would be. Opening his mouth, Ren once again disrupted Xavier mid-speech. Those were the injuries I sustained during our first meeting. Lifting his head up and staring at Xavier directly in the eyes, Ren casually threw the apple in his hand to the side. It's time for me to pay you back for what you've done to me. Frowning, terrifying pressure suddenly sprang out from Xavier's body. What are you talking about? Have you gone insane? With a dagger materializing in his hand, Xavier raised it. Thud. However, just as he was about to attack Ren, the faint sound of something falling on the ground resounded. Turning his head, Xavier's eyes opened wide. A shocked look appeared on his face. Standing behind one of the shadows that had previously surrounded Ren, was a stunning beauty with fair skin and long black hair. With 2 horns on her head, Angelica casually glanced at the other 3 remaining shadows before raising her hand. A black flame suddenly appeared in her hand, causing Xavier's face to pale slightly. A demon. Impossible. He muttered in shock. Staring at Angelica, Ren finally stood up. Opening his mouth, Ren's cold voice echoed inside of Xavier's ears. What did I say? Today I'm definitely going to pay you back for what you've done. As his words faded, rustling sounds could be heard throughout the area as 3 pairs of bloodthirsty red eyes suddenly appeared in the nearby bushes. Rustle. Rustle. I see. After spotting the 3 wolves and finally realizing what was happening, Xavier closed his eyes. It seems like I fell for your trap 876, who would have thought that you'd be resourceful enough to get a count-rank demon to work for you. Xavier had many questions that he wanted to ask, such as why a demon was helping him and how he had known that they were coming, but he did not voice them. He knew that he would only be met with deathly silence. Staring at his 3 other members, Xavier nudged them with his head. Instantly, they dashed towards Angelica's direction, completely disregarding Ren and the 3 wolves. With a dagger in his hand, Xavier's hand fiercely shot out, ruthlessly aiming for Angelica's head. His goal was clear: take out the strongest individual first before taking care of the rest. Nope. A voice suddenly rang out. Coming out from the nearby bushes was Hein, who quickly blocked the path of one of the black-clad individuals. He was one of the weakest of the black-clad individuals. Clang! The smashing of the 2 intense forces directly shaved a layer off the grass-surfaced forest. Some of the weaker tree trunks directly broke apart. Grrr! Following this, the wolves finally made their moves as they quickly dashed forward and helped suppress one of the black silhouettes. Whilst this was going on, Ren did not stand idle. With his toes touching the ground, his body shot forward, and he soon appeared in front of the 2 other black silhouettes. Coating his fist with wind scions, Ren punched out. As he punched out, Ren's sleeves fluttered wildly due to the tremendous speed, creating a paper-like sound. Ren's fist then violently shot forward. Within the short distance, the intense force that the fist carried emitted a sharp whistle of wind splitting. The sharp noise of the wind breaking behind him caused the black silhouette's face to turn aghast. This seemingly simple punch contained such force that it made the black silhouette instinctively want to avoid it. Bang! You!
Ugh!
A clear sound echoed throughout the forest, which was soon followed by a groan. Taking a couple of steps back, the black silhouette was forced to divert his attention away from Angelica. The youth before him was not someone he could take lightly. Swoosh! Just as Ren's body stabilized, a sharp wind flashed toward him. With a calm expression on his face, Ren forcefully twisted his body and narrowly dodged the sharp tip of a blade. His body shot back a couple of steps as he expressionlessly stared at the blade. Placing his hand on the sheath of his sword, a white glow sprang out from his body as a subtle clicking sound soon rang out. Click! A white light enveloped the area within a second that the glow appeared. Not long after, a body fell onto the ground. A huge gaping hole appeared by his head. Just like that, a ranked individual had died. This all happened in seconds. I'm impossible. Just when the other black-clad individual was about to support his partner, to his utter dismay, he was already dead. To make matters worse, he wasn't able to see how his partner had died. Stomping his foot on the ground and dashing backwards, he quickly took out a small communication device and tried to get in contact with the headquarters. Emergency, emergency, It's no use. Standing on the same spot as before, Ren calmly stared at the black-clad individual in front of him. Bending down and taking the dimensional space off of the black-clad individual he had just killed, he softly said. All your devices will not function within this radius. Hein and Ava were not the only people that had improved during these past 4 months. Ryan had also been hard at work. Although he still couldn't quite figure out the chip, he learned a lot of new things. One such thing was that he could now hack through different communications devices and block any transmission from going out. Under the protection of Leopold, Ryan and Small Snake were currently not so far from here, trying their best to help through the aid of the drones in the sky and through blocking all forms of communication. This was extremely important since Ren did not want the monolith to find out the fact that he had companions working for him. The less information they knew, the bigger his advantage in the long run. Furthermore, although Leopold's fighting abilities were above Hein's and Ava's, someone needed to watch out for their safety. They were powerless after all.
Shh!
*T. Listening to Ren's words, the black-clad individual's face turned aghast. Being in denial is not a good thing. Taking advantage of the black-clad individual's panic, Ren's toes gently pressed onto the ground. Soon, his body disappeared and reappeared in front of the black-clad individual, completely catching him off guard. Curling his fist into a ball, a green hue shrouded Ren's fist, directly smashing towards the abdomen area of the black-clad individual. Bam! Chi! Helpless against the attack that came unexpectedly and extremely fast, the black-clad individual violently threw up a mouthful of fresh blood. Subsequently, he feebly fell onto the ground. Thud. Apathetically watching the black-clad individual fall to the ground, Ren simply wiped his hand indifferently. Then, turning his head, he looked towards Angelica's direction to see how she was faring. Boom! In the distance, an explosion rang out, and 2 figures shot back. On one side was Angelica, who was wholly unscathed, whilst on the other was Xavier, who was breathing heavily with torn clothes.
Ha!
Glaring at Angelica, who was standing opposite of him, Xavier shouted. Why are you helping a human? You're a demon, we're on the same side. The monolith was an association that directly worked for the demons. Never did Xavier expect a demon to work with 876. Listening to Xavier's words, a disgusted look appeared on Angelica. "Don't lump me on the same side as you guys." The black-colored flames around her exquisite body intensified following Angelica's words. A savage black flame violently surged forth from her body in the blink of an eye. The black flame gradually spiraled upwards, finally forming an enormous pillar of black that shot towards the sky. The intense heat caused by the flames caused the nearby trees and vegetation to turn into ash. Waving her hand, the enormous pillar of flames shot towards Xavier, who was standing opposite to her. "Disappear from this world."
Shh.
*T. Staring at the incoming flames, Xavier clenched his jaw tightly and cursed out loud. Despite of the fact that he and Angelica were of the same rank, their strengths were nowhere near similar. That was for one simple reason. Angelica was a pure demon whilst he was only someone who borrowed the power of a demon. Simply put, her count-rank bloodline was enough to suppress the little demon bloodline Xavier had in his body due to the consumption of the devil fruits. This was also why demons never worried about the monolith or their contractees betraying them. Their bloodline suppression was enough to completely put them in their place. Unless another demon of a similar rank showed up, no one could stop her. Had Xavier been a regular human, he would have been able to go toe-to-toe with her, perhaps even overpower her. But he no longer was. "Damn it!" Crying out, Xavier suddenly raised his dagger. His mana surged out, and a blue hue suddenly enveloped his dagger. A blue pillar with faint black threads of demonic energy curling around it rose in the air. Xavier's clothes fluttered wildly. Staring at the incoming flames, Xavier knew that he had to go all out or he was done for.
Ha!
Once Xavier gathered enough mana, letting out a desperate cry, he slashed forward with all of his might as a faint thunder noise suddenly sounded. Soon, the two attacks collided, and deathly silence shrouded the forest. The silence continued for a few minutes as the two energies clashed in the sky, seemingly at a stalemate. However, the stalemate did not last for long as both energies soon seemed to have exhausted their strength as they slowly died down and converged together into a small black and blue ball in the air. With her brows knit, Angelica stared at the ball in the distance. Then, raising her fair hand, she suddenly clenched it into a fist. "Break!" Bang! As her words faded, an explosive blast echoed throughout the mountain range. Pooh-chee! Bang! Spitting a mouthful of blood, Xavier helplessly fell back and collided back first against a tree. The explosion contained both his and Angelica's energies combined. The fact that he had still not died was a miracle in itself. Whack! Once Xavier's body smashed against the tree, he once again spat another mouthful of blood. Then, with one hand on the ground, trying to support his body, Xavier saw the shadow of 2 feet appear before him. KH. With a ghastly pale face, he looked up. There, coldly looking at him from above, was Ren. Bending down, Ren grabbed Xavier by the head. "I told you, didn't I?" Leaning his head forward, he whispered. "I told you that I would make you pay for what you did to me." Kraka. Putting his hand on Xavier's shoulder, the sound of bones breaking rang out. That's the first shoulder. Another chapter in about an hour or two. Chapter 296, Pledge 3. Kraka. 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 The repetitive sound of bones breaking resounded across the forests. Second shoulder, right arm, right ribs. Repeatedly breaking each and every one of Xavier's bones, I did not realize that Xavier had long passed out from the pain. White foam streamed down from his mouth as his eyes had completely turned white. Kraka. This time it was his left leg. With rage clouding my mind, I completely lost myself in the torture. Of course, I wasn't aware of what was going on, but all I felt at the moment was the unprecedented urge to destroy Xavier. Ren, stop. Huh? I could only wake up from my hysteria after I felt a slight nudge on my shoulder. Turning around and seeing Hein and Ava looking at me with worried and fearful expressions on their faces, it was then that I finally realized what was going on. Closing my eyes and exhaling deeply, I apologized.
Ha!
Sorry. I lost myself there for a second. Wiping the sweat that had accumulated on my forehead, I silently stood up. It happened again. Clenching my fists hard, I glared at the sky. For months had passed since I had escaped the monolith, and even then, I was still suffering from the backlash of the experiments back in the monolith. Subjected to virtual simulations and serum dosages every day for months, a part of me broke, and at times, I would lose myself just like now. To make matters worse, I had no way of controlling these types of moments. Instead, they were now deeply engraved into my brain. This was part of the reason why I didn't want to meet my parents for too long. I didn't want them to see this new side of me. The only reason I was able to restrain my urge with them was because of Monarch's indifference. Whenever I felt the urge, I would quickly activate it to stop myself from losing control. But I knew that this wasn't a long-term solution.
Ha!
Calming myself down and turning my head, I looked towards Ava and Hein. Are you guys done on your side as well? Yes, we've taken him down. Hein replied. Looking behind them, I could see one of the black-clad individuals on the ground, presumably dead. I nodded my head in satisfaction. I see. Good job. You guys finished? Ryan's voice suddenly rang inside of my ear. Tapping onto my ear, I responded. Yes, we're done here. You can come down. Okay. Once Ryan's voice faded, I lowered my head. Then, crossing my arms, I looked at Xavier, who was beneath my feet and on the verge of death. Although almost all of his bones had shattered and he was almost dead, he still had one more role to fulfill. He couldn't die just yet. Just as I was about to bend down towards him, Angelica appeared by my side. Placing her hand on Xavier's chest, she slowly removed all of the demonic energy that was lingering in his body. This process took a while, but before long, any sign that she had fought with him disappeared. Human, you've improved a lot. She muttered as she was removing the demonic energy from Xavier's body. Without taking my eyes away from Xavier, I softly replied. You too. I guess Silik's situation helped you out a lot. About 14 months had passed since I had last seen Silik. Given that the time in Amora flowed much slower, about a decade had passed there. I had initially expected the war in Amora to end in about 3 years, however, my calculations were far off. The war in Amora had continued for over a decade, and it was only around 3 months ago that Silik had broken through to rank. Even then, he still had not joined the war. He was still biding his time. According to Angelica, Silik told her that the Orc Chief and Marquis Azeroth had still not clashed yet. He was only going to swoop in when both sides were injured. That was fine with me, though. Although I wanted the war to end sooner so that Silik could build his forces faster, this still worked out since I was still unsure about Silik's stance. On the bright side, Silik's breakthrough had benefited Angelica a lot. Thanks to him, she was able to break through to Count rank in only 6 months. It was an alarming rate of progress. One that even left me speechless. Ren. A familiar voice suddenly sounded out. Turning my head, I soon spotted a few familiar figures approaching me from a distance. The edges of my lips curled upwards. You guys are finally here. The individuals were Ryan, Small Snake, and Leopold. Thanks for the help. You guys helped out a lot. No problem. Small Snake nodded his head before casually throwing a small object in my direction. Here's the listening device that you've asked for. Oh, nice. Catching the device, I bent down towards Xavier. The device that Small Snake had given me was a simple listening device. Nothing special. What are you doing? Ryan curiously asked. Nothing much. Putting the small device into Xavier's mouth and making him swallow it, tapping on my bracelet once, I proceeded to take out a syringe from my dimensional space. A nostalgic smile appeared on my face. A pity that you won't be able to know what hit you. Sticking the sharp needle of the syringe towards Xavier's neck, I injected him with a high dosage of the serum. Cuck. A slight sound escaped from Xavier's mouth. Ignoring it, after injecting him with the first dosage of the serum, I tossed the syringe to the side and took another one and repeated the same process. Cuck. A similar sound escaped from his mouth once I injected him with the second dosage. Xavier was an unranked individual. One syringe was not enough for him to ultimately become brain dead. This was why I injected him with another dosage. As I predicted, the moment I injected the second full dosage of the serum, Xavier's body started to convulse like crazy. Ren? Small Snake, alongside the others, took a step back. Don't worry, he's going to be fine. See, he's fine. Not even halfway through my words and Xavier's body stopped convulsing. Then, opening his eyes, revealing a languid look devoid of any emotion, Xavier blankly stared at the sky. What have you done? Hein asked from the side. Throwing the syringes away, my eyes became sharp. Nothing much, I've just given him a taste of his own medicine. He was the individual that had approved the project. Letting him have a taste of the serum was an excellent way to make him understand what I went through during those hellish 8 months. Well, it no longer mattered since he was now wholly brain dead. Tapping onto my bracelet, I took out an empty dimensional ring and tossed it towards Small Snake. Here, take this ring and complete the task that I briefed you on before. Okay. Taking the ring, Small Snake hesitatingly turned around and left. Before long, he returned to my side and threw the ring in my direction. Catching the ring with my right hand, I put the ring on Xavier's finger. Then, tapping onto another ring that was resting on Xavier's finger, I slowly channeled my mana onto the ring. Have a safe trip. 10 seconds after my words faded, out of nowhere, Xavier magically disappeared from where he was. As he disappeared, I took out a small black box and sat down on a nearby rock. Staring at the black box in my hand, the smile soon disappeared off of my face as a cold look soon replaced it. A body was placed in the middle of the hall that was shrouded by a gloomy atmosphere. The body belonged to Xavier, who suddenly appeared out of thin air inside the VIP portal area. Everyone in the hall remained silent as they eyed Xavier's body. Although he was still alive and breathing, his brain was completely dead. So no matter how much they tried to stimulate it, they couldn't get any reaction from him. As such, extracting information from him was no longer possible. At this moment, of the people in the hall dared to emit the slightest sound because they could feel the chilly killing intent of the older man seated in an oversized chair. Is this his way of mocking us? Mo Jinhao stared at the corpse with bloodied eyes as he clenched his teeth audibly. Explosive anger that was suppressed deeply inside of him could be heard in his thick voice. To the people in the room, every second felt agonizing. The pressure exuding from Mo Jinhao's body was too oppressive. Bang! Breaking the silence, the doors of the hall smacked open. A rushed figure entered the hall. Bending down on one knee, he reported. Deputy Head, we've found out about the contents of the dimensional ring on Xavier's finger. Tell me. Yes. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva with his head still lowered, the servant tapped on a small tablet, and a holographic image suddenly popped up in front for everyone to see. Once the image appeared for everyone to see, heavy silence descended in the room. Is this a joke? Thick killing intent enveloped the room as Mo Jinhao stood up and glared at the servant. No deputy head, this is what was found in the dimensional space. Under Mo Jinhao's heavy pressure, the servant started to perspire heavily. Finally, his complexion turned ashen white, and his body sunk to the floor. Ignoring the servant and staring at the holographic image, a ferocious killing intent rose inside of Mo Jinhao's heart. Depicted on the holograms was the image of 4 heads placed side by side. The reason for Mo Jinhao's anger was because he knew who those heads belonged to. They were the heads of the other 4 individuals that went with Xavier. This was a blatant provocation to him. Lowering his head and staring at the servant, Mo Jinhao's eyes narrowed. Was there anything else in the dimensional ring? Why, yes. Without looking up, the servant fearfully nodded his head. Give it to me. Swallowing another mouthful of saliva and trembling all over, the servant took out a small black box and handed it to Mo Jinhao. Here. Casually taking the box, Mo Jinhao asked. What's this? It's a communication device. A communic. Ding. Ding. As soon as Mo Jinhao held onto the black box, the box started to vibrate. The room instantly became quiet. Lowering his head, Mo Jinhao's brows knit. Then, pressing onto the top right corner of the small box, he muttered in a soft voice. 876. Though his voice was silent, it powerfully rang inside of the ears of everyone present in the room. KHHHHH. A static sound sounded. 876? Before long, a cheerful yet confused voice suddenly sounded from the device's speaker. Right, that's what you guys called me. Been a while since I've heard of that nickname. Not gonna lie, kinda miss it. It's you. This voice. Mo Jinhao, I presume? Mo Jinhao didn't answer. However, those around him suddenly felt the air around them thicken up considerably. Their breathing started to become rougher. I'll take the silence as a yes. Ren continued. The reason why I called you was to ask whether you liked my present or not. How was it? I spent quite a bit of time preparing everything for you. So don't I at least deserve a little thank you? Tangible bloodlust suddenly manifested from Mo Jinhao's back as everyone in the room turned pale. Don't be so angry. All I did was just kill an extra. Not that you'd know what it means. Anyhow, the reason I called you here was to just say one thing. Suddenly the voice behind the speaker became colder. Hear me carefully because I'll only say it once. As if a switch had been flipped, the cheerful voice from before wholly disappeared. I'm here to make a pledge. Clenching tightly onto the black box, a thick aura sprang out from Mo Jinhao's body. His gray eyes coldly looked at the box in front of him as his clothes fluttered wildly. Remember, when I return, and I mean when because I will return. Conviction could be felt from Ren's voice as he spoke. It was as though he was utterly certain that he would return. As if this outcome had been predetermined from the very beginning. When that happens, make sure to count your days. Because no matter how long it will take, be it a year, 2 years, or even a decade, I will come back. So remember this moment. Remember what I just said today, because once you look back on it and how many X years in the future, I want you to remember that this was the day that I proclaimed yours and the monoliths. Crush. Cutting the speech off, Mo Jinhao crashed the black device in his hand. With a terrifying glare on his face, his body trembled uncontrollably as a black aura surged out from his body, completely enveloping the hall. The hall suddenly shook, and Mo Jinhao's enraged roar reverberated throughout the whole building. 876. Chapter 297, Henneler 1. KHHHHH. The static sound of the radio sounded. I guess he hung up. A trace of pity flashed across my eyes as I put the radio transmitter away. Standing up and putting my coat on, I nudged the others to follow me. All right, let's go. Now that I had taken care of the annoying flies swarming on my back, I could now go to my destination without too many worries. Ren, how long do we have left? Ryan asked from behind. We're almost there. Our current destination was Henneler, the dwarven capital. After traveling for the past 4 months, we had almost arrived at the location. Precise time? About 1 more week of travel, I would say. Originally we were supposed to take a lot less time to arrive, however, to slow down Xavier and the others' pursuit, I decided to take a slight detour and traveled near the elven border. Fortunately, during our fight right now the elves didn't get involved, but in all likelihood, they were already aware of our presence. Let's go before we run into trouble. Are you talking about the elves? Small Snake arrived by my side and followed along. That's right. Playing with the dimensional spaces that he had collected from the people we had just killed, Small Snake handed them to me. Do you think they'd attack us? I heard that they don't attack humans. Sort of, but you can never be too safe. With humanity's advancement these past few decades, all 3 races started viewing humans in a more favorable light. That being said, this didn't mean that they still fully trusted us. This was why a conference was going to be held soon. It was made with the purpose of talking about the potential 3rd cataclysm that was soon going to hit the Earth and the possibility of allowing humanity to join the Alliance. Well, that was well into the future. Right now, my goal was to enter the Dwarven domain and increase my strength by leaps and bounds. Let's hurry for now. I don't want to meet any trouble along our way. A few kilometers away from where Ren and the others were, gazing at them from a distance, were 2 obscured figures. With each breath the 2 figures took, the mana in the air would follow their breathing rhythm. Almost as though they were in complete sync with the mana in the air. Should we attack? Looking right, one of the figures asked as a melodious voice rang out. Judging from their subservient tone, it was evident that the figure they talked to was higher ranked. No. The other figure shook its head. What about the demon? The higher-ranked figure pointed towards the distance, revealing a delicate white hand devoid of imperfection. Did you sense the mana of the people they were fighting? It was tainted with demonic energy. Right, for that female demon to work with humans and kill multiple contracted individuals, we can assume that she is no longer on the same side as the demons. Although most demons worked with each other, in the end, what they cared for most was their self-interest. Just because they were from the same race didn't mean that they had to help them. This was a natural occurrence that occurred in all races. That's true. However, I've also noticed that the demon follows that human with long hair. Strange. The whole time they observed the fight in the distance, they noticed that everything revolved around a specific human with long black hair and blue eyes. From how he was the one being targeted, to how the demon seemed to be following his orders. That is indeed strange, let's observe a little more. As those words faded, the 2 figures disappeared. Just like usual, Amanda sat on her desk and completed her paperwork. This was a boring route that she had grown accustomed to over the last year or so in her new position in the Demon Hunter Guild. Demon Hunter Guild, board member, Amanda Stern. Her nameplate reflected the sunlight coming from the window behind her. Knock. Knock. A knocking sound sounded. Come in. Lifting her head, Amanda opened her mouth, and the door opened. You called for me? Unceremonially entering the room, a slim girl with long light brown hair and a pair of glasses entered the room. It was Melissa. So, what did you call me for, Amanda? Melissa asked as she looked around the neatly organized office. It was spotless. Then, sitting on the sofa in front of Amanda, she crossed her legs and propped her elbow on the sidearm of the sofa. Putting the stack of papers down, Amanda wordlessly stared at Melissa, sitting opposite her. This continued for a couple of seconds until Melissa could no longer take it and mouthed in annoyance. So? You just called me here to admire my beauty? Sorry, but I'm not really into girls. How is the project going? Disregarding Melissa's comments, Amanda finally opened her mouth and asked. The project? It's going well, why? Has something come up from your end? No. Amanda shook her head, prompting Melissa's brows to furrow. Then why did you call me? Don't tell me you asked me to come here to find out about how the project is going, right? Melissa grumbled as she rested her cheek on her right arm. You do know phones exist, right? It's not that. Waving her hand, a small barrier appeared, enveloping the two of them. What are you doing? Melissa looked at the barrier that was slowly forming around her. Though startled, she didn't show much of a reaction. She knew Amanda well. She wasn't one to do stupid things. You know, I was joking about the previous comments about you being into girls, unless. Here. Ignoring Melissa, tapping onto a small tablet resting on her desk, a holographic video soon popped up. Pressing onto the image midair, the video soon began playing. Once the video began playing, multiple different scenarios started to show. In all those scenarios, there was a common thing, a middle-aged man playing with a young girl. The only difference was the last video, where the middle-aged man hugged a couple before leaving. Annoyance could be felt in Melissa's voice as she took her eyes away from the video and looked at Amanda. What's this? Are you perhaps looking for a partner to look at dramas with you? No, look carefully. Amanda then pointed towards the middle-aged man playing with the girl in the video. That's Ren. For a brief moment, silence enveloped the room. Opening and closing her mouth multiple times, Melissa didn't know what to say. She was dumbstruck by Amanda's sudden statement. This was until her face suddenly twisted weirdly. Have you completely lost it? Has all the work you've been doing finally fried your brain into oblivion? It has not. Amanda calmly replied. Melissa snorted in response. Knew who, it has. So you are telling me that Ren has now become some weird middle-aged man that plays with kids? I have proof. Proof? Melissa stopped and raised her brow. Nodding her head and taking out a small key, Amanda inserted the key inside her drawer. She then twisted it and slid the drawer back. After taking out a couple of files, she handed them to Melissa. Here. What's this? Taking the papers with a confused look on her face, Melissa slowly read through them. She asked after a while, alternating her gaze between the video and the files. Are these the profiles of the people in the video? They're Ren's parents. Scratching the side of her head, Melissa tapped on the names of the profiles. Right, I figured from their names, and the fact that his father looks similar to him, but this isn't nearly enough to prove that he is Ren. Look at this as well. Amanda slid another paper in Melissa's direction. On that paper was a detailed profile of the middle-aged man who visited them in the video. According to our investigation, that man in the video has long disappeared 10 years ago. This was the first time in 10 years that he has appeared. Taking the paper, Melissa carefully looked through it without speaking. Sitting opposite to her, Amanda was unable to read her expression. Instead, she seemed to be lost in her own world. It was only after a couple of minutes had passed that Melissa finally opened her mouth. How sure are you about this? Very sure, Amanda replied. With the power of her guild, this kind of investigation was a piece of cake for her. She had information on Ren's parents due to having done a background check on them prior to when they first met and when Ren had asked to protect them. This was to get a better idea of who the people they were protecting were. On another note, Nola's recent behavior had given Amanda another reason to believe that the man in the video was Ren in disguise. I see, Melissa muttered underneath her breath. Sitting up straight and tapping her finger on the armrest of the sofa, she asked. Let's say what you said is true, why did you tell me? Aren't you a little too trusting of me? The contract. The what? Taking out a piece of paper from her drawer, Amanda placed it on the table and pointed towards a certain text. The contract you signed with Ren and me. It clearly states that we can't do anything to harm each other. As the third business partner, Amanda had also signed a similar contract. Although the contract wasn't a mana contract, as Melissa didn't want her father to find out about the project, the contract would directly break upon the infringement of a predetermined term through a particular spell. From there, the other parties could directly go to the central government to present the case. In short, if Melissa breached the contract, she would lose the rights to her project. Even if her father interfered, she could do nothing about it. Silently staring at the contract on Amanda's table, Melissa's brows knit. Okay, fine. But it still doesn't explain why you told me about the possibility of Ren still being alive. Putting the contract and profiles away, Amanda put the papers back into her drawer and locked them with the key. It's because I need you to send someone to protect Ren's parents. Huh? Melissa's face turned ugly. Did I hear correctly? So you want me to get someone to protect Ren's parents? Wasn't that your job? MHM. Amanda softly nodded her head. She was also helpless in this situation. Although it was her job to keep Ren's parents safe, news about her father's disappearance started to make waves. The other diamond-graded guilds were starting to become bolder and bolder, and Amanda knew that Ren's parents might end up suffering from the repercussions. Even though she was still trying her best to keep them safe, she could no longer guarantee their safety like before. She asked for Melissa's help because her background was even more significant than hers. If she helped, she didn't have to worry about their safety. Can you at least tell me why? Melissa asked. With a wry smile on her face, Amanda apologetically shook her head. Sorry. Covering her face, Melissa's mouth twitched. You know what? Fine. I don't care. Melissa then stood up. I'll do it. Either way, I still need about half a year. In half a year, I'll have the product ready. I'll use the money, his or your money, to pay for the fee of the people that will protect his parents. Amanda gratefully looked at Melissa. Thank you. Tisk. Melissa clicked her tongue in displeasure. Then, turning her wrist, she checked the time. All right, I have to go now. I'll contact you again once I'm done with the project. MHM. Nodding at Melissa, Amanda watched as she left her office. Once Melissa left the office, looking at the holographic video in front of her, Amanda tapped on the screen and pressed delete. Soon the holographic video shut down, and the last evidence of Ren's existence disappeared. She had already deleted all other video footage of him appearing. This was the best she could do for him. Leaving Amanda's office, Melissa's brows furrowed tightly. Halting her steps and staring at the empty hall before her, she softly muttered. So he's still alive. Although she didn't show it outwardly back in Amanda's office, she was quite startled by the revelation. Even now, she still couldn't believe what Amanda had told her. It was only after she left Amanda's office that it genuinely hit Melissa. Ren was still alive. Her previous behavior was merely a small facade to try to hide her current shocked feelings. This fucker, just when I thought I finally got rid of you. Taking out her phone, Melissa soon looked through the contacts in her phone. Staring at a specific contact, her brows twitched before finally dialing the number. Before long, a joyful voice rang out from the speaker. "Why, if it isn't my little angel of a niece Mel." "Shut up, I've got a job for you." Chapter 298, Henneler, 2. Wow. Standing on top of a hill, my mouth opened in amazement. The scenery I've only seen in movies and paintings was currently presented before me. It was a lot more mesmerizing than I had ever imagined. I could barely take my eyes away from the sight. The mountain range revealed nature clearer than anywhere I had ever seen before. The slight chill in the air was enough to give me a gentle shiver, but not enough to find the need to cover up. Staring into the distance, the gentle breeze coming down from the mountains tickled the trees, making their leaves shake and sway as though they were laughing. "Is that where we're supposed to go?" Leopold asked as he pointed at the mountain range in the distance. "It is indeed the place." Giving a small nod, I replied. "That over there is Henneler, the dwarven capital, and our destination." Traversing 1,000 kilometers over these past few months, we were finally close to reaching our destination. Just like usual, we encountered a few beasts during our journey, but in general, nothing out of the norm that would result in our trip being delayed occurred. The only noticeable delay in our journey was the monolith incident, but it was now over. I guess we can finally have a proper night's sleep." Leopold yawned and packed up the camping equipment beside him. Turning my head, I wryly smiled. "Not so sure about that." "What?" "It'll depend on our luck." Although Henneler was generally safe and did not block humans from entering the place, that didn't mean that it was completely safe. It was best to stay alert at all times. "Seriously?" And here I wanted to finally rest. "Tell me about it." Constantly watching our backs due to the threat of beasts, apart from Ryan, almost everyone here was running low on sleep. "Ren." "Yes?" Holding onto a small tablet, Ryan suddenly ran up to me. "I've found it. I've found the entrance of the place." "That fast?" Because the mountain range was massive, finding the exact location of Henneler was a lot harder than originally anticipated. Fortunately, I had Ryan with me, who could use his drones and equipment to look for the place. Shoving the tablet in front of my face, Ryan excitedly pinched the screen and pointed towards a specific area in the mountains. "Yes, check over here. Doesn't this look like a statue?" "It sure does." Because the drone was so high up in the sky, to avoid the dwarves' detection, I wasn't able to see too much. However, from what I could make out, by the side of one of the mountain ranges in the distance, there seemed to be some sort of artificial monument. Sort of like a statue. Taking my eyes away from the tablet, I patted Ryan's head. "Good job." Ryan pridefully laughed at my compliment, prompting a smile to appear on my face. I guess he's a child at heart. Even though Ryan was a genius and acted mature at times, he was still a kid after all. Just a simple praise and he became so excited. "Guys, pack up, we're going." Finally, we had arrived at the dwarven domain. At the same time, standing not so far from where they were, sunlight seeped past the thick canopy of branches, revealing the figures of two elves. Both elves shared similar features, with fair skin, pointy ears, and stunning faces. However, there was a difference between the two. Their hair. Of the two, one of the elves' hair, instead of being pure gold, though faint, had a mix of silver in it. An almost regal aura spread from that elf's body. "What should we do? Should we follow?" Squinting, the golden-haired elf asked. "No, we can't go any deeper. Is it because of the demons' movements? Correct. The demons were starting to make their move. The usual skirmishes that occurred between each border lengthened and the general rank of each force were increasing. To the three races, this was a sign that the demons were preparing for war. As such, the two elves that had been spying on the humans for the past week could no longer continue their observation. At least for now. So what should we do now? Should we let them go? MHM. The silvered-haired elf turned around and disappeared. They're bound to leave sooner or later. We might meet them again in the future. As we neared Henneler, the massive stone gates of the city that were attached to the side of the Rocky Mountains soon appeared in my vision. Built beside the gate were at least several statues depicting dwarves holding onto massive axes and hammers. Their imposing presence made me, who's standing below them, feel insignificant. Contrary to when I was looking at the scenery from the drone, it was only now that I was close that I truly understood the sheer size of the monument. It was massive. Nearing the gates of Henneler, an earthy and sulfur-like scent invaded my nostrils, prompting my brows to momentarily furrow. Yuck! It seems like I wasn't the only that didn't like the smell as Ryan grimaced and pinched his nose. You'll get used to it. Henneler was the capital of the Dwarven domain. In fact, it was also the only city that existed in the human domain. Unlike the other races that lived on the Earth's surface, dwarves lived underground. There were multiple reasons for this, but in the end, it all boiled down to the fact that the temperature was the hottest nearer to the Earth core. Using the tremendous heat coming from the Earth's center, the dwarves were able to smelt the ores faster and more efficiently. The sulfur-like smell probably originated from the natural gases found in the earth below. Ren, are you sure going through the front is the best way to get in? Small Snake asked as he tapped on my right shoulder. Turning around, I reassured. Yup, don't worry. As I've said before, the three races' prejudice against humanity had died down a lot. Going to their places wasn't out of the question, plus, we weren't particularly strong anyways. Aside from Angelica, who was now back in her ring form, there was no real need for them to be too wary of us. I mean, I was pretty much the strongest of the group, and even then, I was only ranked. Plus, it's not like we're going empty-handed. A look of realization dawned on Small Snake as he smacked the palm of his hand. So that's why you spent so much money on those ores. That's right. On my dimensional space were multiple different ores that I had repurchased in the human domain. The reason I bought them was so that I could trade them with the dwarves. With the crazy amount of metal that they went through each day to craft an artifact, ores were definitely a valuable and scarce resource to them. As long as we came to trade with them, we wouldn't be kicked out. Nearing the enormous gate, I looked back and warned the others. Guys, follow closely behind me. Let me do the talking. Okay. Everyone nodded their heads in unison, prompting me to smile in satisfaction. Great. Before long, arriving right below the massive gate, I spotted a group of small burly creatures holding onto large metallic barrels standing beside the gate. Are those guns? I wondered as I stared at the barrels in the dwarves' hands. They sure looked like guns. Halt! As if they were waiting for our arrival, a dwarf wearing a thick metallic armor stepped forward. With a long ginger beard that fell all the way down towards his neck and light wrinkles by the side of his eyes, the dwarf scanned us from top to bottom with a curious look. Then, opening his mouth, his barky and throaty voice rang out throughout the whole area. Human, state your purpose. Halting my footsteps, the others also stopped. Raising my hands, I spoke up. We mean no harm, we're here to trade. Trade? My words instantly piqued the interest of the dwarf. Interesting, how much be we talking? 100 tons of iron, 100 tons of adenium, 72 tons of rhonium, 56 tons of... Listing the ores I had brought with me, I felt a slight pang in my heart. The amount of money I had to spurge out to buy this much stuff made my heart bleed. I could have probably bought myself an advanced potion with the money I had used to buy this stuff. Exclamation point. As I was listing the ores that I had brought with me, the dwarf opposite to me was left dumbstruck. Opening his mouth wide, his burly, loud voice once again rang out. "You're nae playing with me, be ye?" "No, I'm being completely serious." I was honestly having a bit of a difficult time understanding his words, but thanks to his gestures, I understood somewhat what he was trying to imply. Frantically waving his hand towards my direction, the dwarf said, let me inspect the goods." "Sure." Casually walking towards the dwarf, I took out my dimensional space and tossed it to him, much to the confused reactions of the others behind me. "It's all right, guys. Just trust me." Dwarves were honest and straightforward people. They disliked scheming and cautious people the most. By directly giving him the ring that contained all of the ores inside, I was displaying to him that I was also straightforward. Acting the way I was trying my best to set a favorable impression, almost like in games with NPCs. Though it may backfire on me, it was a risk I was willing to take. Ye weren't lying." Fortunately, it didn't seem to have failed. Playing with the ring in his hand, the dwarf burst out laughing. "I like your attitude, human." Tossing the ring back in my direction, the dwarf turned around and faced the gate. Then, twirling his small bulky hand in the air, he shouted, "Open the gates." Kung! The moment the dwarf's words faded, the ground trembled, and the enormous doors slowly opened up. Staring at the enormous doors in the distance, I wondered, why are the gates so big? The gates were pretty much made for giants, yet, the dwarves which weren't even a quarter of my height were proudly using them. Perhaps it made them look more imposing? Honestly, I did not know, nor did I care too much about finding out as the doors soon fully opened and a wave of hot air suddenly brushed past me. Turning around, the dwarf puffed his chest and pridefully smiled. "Welcome, Ta Henneler."